Hi, I'm Tom from Music and Madness Podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest. His band is coming to play here at the Savannah Center in the Villages. Before I tell you who it is, I want you to know that at least at one time in your life, whether you wanted it to or not, one of his songs has lived in your head. And those songs are Don't Fear the Reaper, Burnin' for You, Godzilla. That's right. Today, my guest is Buck Dharma from Blue Oyster Cult. Buck, welcome to the show.
It's nice to meet you, Tom, and have some palaver.
Yeah, sounds good. So, I want to take you on the Wayback Machine just for a little bit. You kind of started this journey back in college, Stony Brook College, correct?
No, I never attended Stony Brook, although that's where the Soft White Underbelly, the band that preceded
Oh, okay.
BOC,
So you never
got
attended
together.
there. Okay.
No, the actual germination was at Clarkson College in Potsdam, New York, where Albert Bouchard and I went to college at the same time. We were in a bar band there. Albert was the original drummer and sort of creative spark plug of the band, I would say.
And you were how old when you got into the Soft White Underbelly band?
It's like 19.
Yeah, so 19 years old, and you guys got a record deal, did you not?
Well, that took a little while, but it happened largely because we met Sandy Pearlman, who was our mentor and lyricist, and would have been a musician, except that he couldn't play anything, and he couldn't sing very well either. But he loved music and was very knowledgeable and intuitive about what was happening in music and what was good in music. So he wrote the majority of our lyrics early on, and he was also one of the first rock critics to be when rock criticism began to be taken seriously there in the beginning of the album era of vinyl. And he was already being courted by record companies to promote their artists, and because of that, he was able to, when he brought Soft White Underbelly to the labels, we were able to make demos in their studios and be considered to get signed. We made demos for Mercury and Columbia early on, and we got signed to Elektra.
Yeah.
I would say probably a year into our Soft White Underbelly journey. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's think about that for a second. One year, 12 months, and now you're talking to record companies, doing demos, and actually getting a record deal as a young man at that age. Looking back at that, do you
Yeah.
think that that's a bit extraordinary?
Yeah, I hadn't considered doing this for a living until I met Sandy and realized that, we could just give this a try and see what happens, give it a run. For anybody who wants to be a recording artist, it's a pretty steep climb.
Yeah.
You have to be where it's happening, and you have to know somebody pretty much if you want to get signed. I think today, I don't know because I'm not doing it, but it seems like artists have to make their own fame before a record company will even look at you. So
Yeah, overnight success. We had a guy in here who owns a record label, and he said in Nashville, kind of overnight success is about 24 years.
yeah, there's usually if you look at the backstory of any successful artist, it usually is.
Absolutely was extraordinary because here you are, barely old enough to drink, legally drink, and
Mhm.
you're getting a record deal, and then at the age of what 21, you guys signed on with Columbia, did you not?
Well, no, actually I think I was a few years down the road for Columbia, but I was drinking at 18
Yeah,
because in those days
yeah,
that was the drinking age.
yeah, yeah.
But point taken. Yeah.
Yeah, so you sign on with Columbia Records, and just to go back to Sandy Pearlman.
Right. Well, to make a long story short, we did some recordings for Elektra, but we fell out with the label, and largely because I think of Sandy's personality and maybe a member of the Underbelly's personality didn't agree with the label, so they shelved those recordings. They came out about 30 years later on Rhino, and called the Stark Forest Group. And those, that record is streaming now, and it's a good listen for people that are curious. Stalk hyphen Forest Group.
Yeah, that was the name those were under, correct?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was the interim name between Soft White Underbelly and Blue Oyster Cult.
right. And Sandy wasn't that much older than you guys.
No, he was a couple of years ahead of us academically, and he graduated from Stony Brook, and he did some postgraduate stuff at Brandeis. And smarter than me, I would think, just
Well,
at least in terms of his ambition and sense of grandeur.
smart guys surround themselves with smarter people.
Yeah, that's good advice in life.
It is.
You want to hang out with the smart people.
That's
You'll do
right.
better.
How did you feel about putting a lot? You put guys put a lot of faith in Sandy. It sounds like. Did you not?
Well, I think we were, none of us were really know what else we were going to do for a living at that point. I'd gone to college to be a chemical engineer because I had good SATs in the sciences and always were interested in that. But when I got the fever to play guitar, and that happened basically out of seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, like for so many people my age, that was like, hey, I could do that.
Uh,
It seemed like it was worth giving it a shot again. And, my parents kept, saying, when you're going to get a real job.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I handed them the first Columbia LP, that they said, okay, I guess, guess
you,
this is real.
you are going to
So,
be better than playing down to Barney's Tavern that Friday night.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was a musician all his life. But he had a day job too.
Yeah.
He played on weekends most of his life. But certainly for the average musician, even if you're really talented, you didn't hit the big time.
Yeah. Well, there's and the internet is not exposing, but certainly changing that today because, like you said, a lot of these artists have to kind of make it for themselves. But in today's environment, we're getting to see a lot more people.
True,
If you
true. Yeah, you see so much great stuff on the internet, and it's
right,
great.
and pretty soon you get that little thing in your phone that says you've been watching your 4 hours a day for the last week because it's a time sucker. It eats up your time, but it's great. 1976 rolls along, and Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yeah, that was our first single. We were building an album base, and we were actually to the point where we were selling out, theaters and stuff before the Reaper. Because we were touring incessantly, and to Columbia's credit, in those days they stuck with us. The first record sold about 100,000 in its first year, and Tyranny Mutation sold 200, and the next year 73, and Secret Treaties went up another 100,000, and we were working continually just to promote ourselves and to get a live fan base. So on Your Feet or On Your Knees was a live record that preceded Agents of Fortune, and that's the first gold record we had.
That song basically changed the game, did it not?
Yeah, I mean, what they wanted, of course, what we wanted, and what was happening is that, once you had that, the hit single, things sort of blew open. They started really. Agents was our first platinum, and we got to play arenas. We had about a 5-year stint in arenas, and that's how it went.
Were your goals and ambitions? I mean, did you want to be as big as the Rolling Stones? What was your? Because you've got this whole thing going on. You got a band you've got lots of personalities involved because that's a
Yes,
band. You've got
that's a band.
agent. You've got a record label.
Hmm.
You've got outside influences, personal lives. You get this whole thing going on together, and it's a business. And it's a
Right.
business.
We didn't know much about the business end of it, to be frank.
If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, hey, we're having fun. What was your thought back then?
Yeah, well, just, I don't think, certainly Blue Oyster Cult members weren't very savvy about the business end, and I don't think Sandy Perlman was that savvy about it either. So I think, I think we left a lot of money on the table over the years.
That was one of
Again, yeah, we're tickled that we were where we were. It's funny.
Were you trying to take and ride that out as long as you can, or were you just going to let the industry changes happen and you guys landed where you landed?
Yeah, well, I mean, several things happened over the first decade. Disco came in and took
Yeah.
a lot of the rock and roll off the pop charts. That happened, and then um, punk came in sort of replaced rock and roll, pushed it aside. Rap came in the '90s and just obliterated, our kind of rock and roll. And the few
MTV.
rock bands that happened in the '90s,
Yeah.
were good, but they weren't like the glory days of the '70s where there was so much creativity going on. I thought that's when music, I think, retrenched into genres, in a way that it hadn't been in the '70s. You used to hear all kinds of music on the same radio station, and
Right.
then things got really, genrefied, to the detriment, I think, of musical appreciation.
Well, and in the '70s, I mean, very guitar-driven rock and roll. I mean, that was just, man,
Yeah.
and that's what drove so many people to play the guitar. It was
Mhm.
very influential for a lot of people. Then in the '80s, we get
Yeah.
to synthesizers, a lot more keyboard, a lot more.
Right. To me, the '80s, I appreciate the '80s a lot more in retrospect than I did in the moment. Again, because they were just pushing Blue Oyster Cult and artists like us, aside, on the for the charts slots.
So during that time, was there pressure from the label or pressure from the manager, that kind of stuff, to you know change
Mm,
course a little bit to keep up with what was happening, or
Not really. I mean, the labels always find new acts to get excited about, so they don't care. They like it if you sell, but it's the way the relationship with the labels worked, it really came down to, if you had people that worked for the record company that were in your corner and actually were fans of you, and then they would work their butts off for you. But if you didn't have that, or those people left the label or something, you would not get the attention that you'd had prior.
and the radio scene was changing dramatically then too, because also we've got
Yeah, everything was
videos
changing.
and
Yeah.
MTV and
Yeah, videos was a big deal. Video killed Southern rock, I think, in my opinion.
it
People
it
just wanted to see those pretty looking English guys.
yeah. Well, here the MTV started in 1981, and now in 2026 it's over with.
Yeah,
Uh, uh,
yeah. Everything, the wheel turns, everything
everything
changes.
cycles.
Yeah,
Everything cycles. So in '82, you went out on your own, or you did a solo.
yeah. I did a solo record.
Was that based on your, as an artist, your creativity? You wanted to take and do something a little bit different, or
I had written songs that weren't really suitable for BOC because I have a real pop sensibility, and I'm sort of a crooner as a vocalist compared to Eric Bloom, who's the bellower of the band and is saying all the loud stuff. And so I got a record deal from Portrait, which was a associate label of Epic, which is part of the Columbia umbrella. And I did Flat Out in '81, and I had written "Burning for You," the Blue Oyster Cult
right?
song, for that solo record, and Sandy Pearlman convinced me to let the band record it. And in retrospect, it was probably a good idea. It probably got a lot bigger audience than it would have as a Buck Dharma record.
Well, what were your thoughts about that? Would just that was great to do it. Were you inspired to do any more of that, or
Yeah, I mean, I was happy to go back into BOC. It's being like the star. It was never my personality. I mean, yeah, I like to get up. I like when people clap at what I do, but
yeah?
I was comfortable in the band position. Sure.
Have you ever stopped touring? Was there any time frame that you guys stopped?
In '85, we took a hiatus for about 8 months.
Yeah.
In 2009, I fell down a flight of stairs, and I had to wear a neck brace for 6 months and broke my shoulder. But that's about the only time we haven't done anything because, I mean, we don't tour incessantly, but we tour. We like to keep some cash flowing for, everybody in the band so they can make some money, and that's what we do.
At the end of the day, it's still a business. It's
It's a living,
yeah.
Yeah.
A
I mean,
lot.
I could retire now, but, not
You're
go,
not old enough to
yeah.
retire yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm collecting Social Security, so I'm old.
As everybody should.
Yeah.
As everybody should. If you were to guess, what's the number of tours you think you've done in this span?
Supposedly, we're in the Guinness Book as having done the most shows, and that surprised me. I would have thought there would be other bands that did more shows. I know Cheap Trick is just tours all the time.
Yep.
And we don't tour all the time now, but for many decades we did. Yeah.
Most of that was the old-fashioned way, tour bus, correct?
No, in our case, we did some tour buses, but we did a lot of flying
Okay.
and rental cars. That's what we did. The gear would be in a truck,
Yeah.
semis, and the crew would be on buses when we were in arenas. But nowadays, we just all get on an airplane and we check about 18 pieces of gear, a lot of guitars and some drum stuff and effects. And when we show up at the gig, the amps are already there.
Yeah. And nowadays it's certainly different from way back when you started.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we don't carry huge production anymore unless we're playing a place that already has production.
So speaking of production, tell us about the laser shows and those kind of things that you guys did, and you were kind of pioneered that, did you not?
Yeah, yeah. The stupidest thing we did was to buy them ourselves because they were very expensive. And instead of just leasing them from a laser
Yeah.
company, which would have been the thing to do, but we bought from Scientific Atlanta these huge lasers because they were really big at that time. Now they're a lot smaller, but they were fragile. It was a glass tube. It was in a aluminum welded cage that was probably about as big as a big dining room table. Each one water cooled. You had to hook up water to it every day, but the effects was just mind boggling. It looked so good. We got a demo in a loft in Lower Manhattan, and man, we were mesmerized. Pink Floyd was using lasers and stuff, but I think Blue Oyster Cult was the only band to do the things that we did. We scanned the crowds. The laser fires into oscillating mirrors, but you get planes of light, you get cones of light, you just put some theatrical smoke in the air so you could see the laser beams, but just the crowd would be looking into the cone, which is an effect you only see in movies now, or the planes of laser light would go up and down, of course, like this, and just we also Eric had a fiber optics bracelet on his wrist, and at a certain point he would point at a mirror ball in the center of the hall. The beam would come out of his finger and it would hit the ball, and there would be spikes of light like that video game Tempest that would just go all over the place. It was amazing to see. The band got really lazy when we had it because we were just waiting for the lasers to come on so we could be mesmerized like everybody else. It was
Stand and
great.
watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And back in the day, lasers were not probably not as fielded for safety as they are today.
Yeah, what happened was that the OSHA, the Occupational Hazard and Safety Administration, government, followed us around for about 6 weeks. And when they got done, they basically outlawed our whole show. And it's not because we'd ever hurt anybody, but the idea that it was up to us whether people got hurt or not was something that they couldn't abide,
Were you ever able to take and get any particular form of that back after that or not?
Not really. I mean, I think Sandy did something with the lasers at some point, but
Today the
it
lighting
was
is
basically, yeah, and it was a stupid amount of money,
yeah.
But in that time, it was probably $300,000 at least we spent on that in 1 year. So
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
yeah,
That's a lot of
yeah,
ticket sales.
yeah, that's a lot of royalties we could have put in our pocket, but we said,
Yeah.
let's just spend it on the lasers.
Yeah. Well, it cool comes with a cost.
Yeah, that's a good saying.
So April 8th, 2000 shows up and Will Ferrell's got the cowbell. I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but on Saturday
Oh,
Night
yeah.
Live, that being what's your emotional thoughts about that being like the most popular skit ever from Saturday Night Live?
I mean, at this point, I'm rather proud of it.
At the time, did you feel the same way?
I thought the skit was hilarious,
Yeah.
and I didn't see it coming. Nobody told us, but that was my first reaction after seeing it was relief that SNL hadn't trashed the band or
Yeah.
just made fun of us. It was just a funny skit, and it was okay. Of course, you got to live with the cowbell, and that's its own burden. But it's a much more of a burden for Christopher Walken and even Will Ferrell than it is for Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah. Supposedly, they sat on that skit for about 6 months or so before they actually did it.
Yeah, I'd heard that they floated it 3 times and didn't do it. But of course, it's Christopher Walken who's the
Yeah.
star of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and it's just he hates it because that's all anybody ever says to him is more cowbell.
yeah. It's like taking the role of Leave It to Beaver. It stuck with you, stuck with him
No,
for.
I feel sorry. I feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
I'm just glad it didn't ruin "Don't Fear the Reaper" as a
Oh,
song.
yeah.
The song has survived the cowbell,
It's
even though it helped the cowbell, and cowbell helped the band with publicity. But if it had wrecked the song, I would have been annoyed.
yeah.
Certainly.
Back in the early days of touring, when you did do the bus tours and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
how was that? Was that like the? I mean, you hear about that being a very unglorious part of the job.
In the early days, touring was great. Got to visit all these places you'd never seen, and and in those days before communication, I mean, a phone call was $3 a minute in those days, and
Yeah.
$3 isn't that money.
Yeah.
So when you went out, you were out. You were gone. You were basically someplace else. You were sort of unaccountable, and that was. I mean, that was a great thing to do, to travel, to go overseas, to
Yeah.
see all these different countries. It was great.
Have you ever played here in the Villages before?
Yes, we played a performing arts center in the Villages, but I don't know which village it was. But it was a very nice room.
Probably the
Very
Sharon,
beautiful room.
possibly the Sharon, or this. Yeah, you're playing at the Savannah Center this time around.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I hear that's really nice too.
It is. It's a great venue. That the Village people are, they're great people. There's a lot of rock and roll fans, of course. The Reaper just, how can you not play that if you're, a guitar rock and roll band on the square? It's played quite frequently.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'm all for it. I like covers of the Reaper.
What do you think about what in the? I want to go back to the first time you ever heard somebody that has changed the arrangement of one of those songs of yours, because the Reaper's been rearranged several times.
Well, most people that cover it, try to do something new, which is great.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would have a big hit with it. That would make me very happy. But so far, the original is the benchmark.
And so I know they've rearranged the Reaper. They've certainly rearranged "Burning for You." Is there any other stuff that they've rearranged?
I don't know. Bands have taken a shot at a lot of our songs, and most of them, I give them credit for.
Do you have any particular process that you go through that's similar for every single song?
Traditionally, with the lyricists that the band have used, Sandy Pearlman, Richard Meltzer, Eric wrote a couple of songs with Michael Moorcock, Ian Hunter, who else? Several people. Oh, Patti Smith wrote lyrics on like 5 BOC songs. And you start from the lyric and you write the music. And sometimes, in the case of the Reaper, I wrote the riff first. And the first 2 lines of the lyric just sort of flew into my head unbidden. And after that, the germ of the story, developed. It took about 6 weeks to finish that song.
And how about Godzilla?
Godzilla, the riff. But it made me think of Godzilla right away. And there's not too many words in Godzilla. I mean, there's not a lot to say. I just tried to get the flavor of that first black and white Godzilla movie that Hollywood dubbed Raymond Burr into. So there was some English stuff going on there.
Was there any particular song that you've written that you thought this is going to be the one, and it turned out not to be? And the ones that did turn out to be just huge hits, did you feel any different about those when you wrote them or produced them?
It wasn't until The Reaper was a hit that I think the band thought about, well, we have to write hit singles now, because we were never a singles band until then. Then everybody wanted to write hit, and everybody in the band wrote, the 5 of us, we all wrote. So, and there probably was a period where I think we were trying too hard to write a hit, maybe the songs weren't quite as good as they should have been. But
Just trying to get them out there and just
no, just trying to
throw them up to
appeal
the
to
wall.
what we thought the mass market was. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody was trying to do that. I mean, I never approached it that way, but I know what I like to hear, and when I hear a hit song and I like it, I know what I like about it.
Was there this change in not attitude, but kind of change in what you wanted to get and what the other members wanted to get out of the band, or was it all just still, hey, we're doing?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Also, we had been together about as long as the Beatles at that point.
yeah,
When the Beatles broke up,
yeah,
they were done. They never came back.
right.
So yeah, I mean that's when the forces that pull bands apart sort of started. Yeah, it was like being almost at the top of the roller coaster before it starts going down. I mean we were psyched.
Well, you had every reason to be
And
psyched.
also, we felt that was the first time that the record company really did what record companies do. That is, ship tons of records out there and make sure, and really start putting effort to get the radio stations to play the song and stuff like
You heard a lot more of your stuff on the radio at that time. How did that feel? Like, oh my gosh, they're playing it again. It's over here. It's
that.
over there.
When you hear your song on the radio, you get a kick out of it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't get tired of it when
No,
it comes on now. I say, yeah, turn it up.
yeah, I totally understand that. Is there anything you want to tell the villagers about the show you got coming up?
They're going to enjoy themselves. That's what I'm going to say, because the band in 2026 is just on fire. The fellows in the band now that replace the original guys have been in the band for over 20 years now. So we're all on the same page, and excellent musicianship. A lot of improvisation. There's a lot of jamming going on within the context of the song arrangements, and we all enjoy each other and have a good time. The only reason we keep doing this is because we really like it. Yeah.
If the fun meter was broken, you wouldn't take and
No,
keep
no.
doing
I
it.
mean, I could retire and build ships in bottles or whatever people
Yeah.
do when they retire. But I'd rather do this as long as I can.
Man, I sure
Yeah.
appreciate you spending some time, and we're going to get this out and let the villagers hear a little bit about Buck Dharma before you arrive.
Yeah. Come on down, villagers. You won't be sorry. I guarantee it.
I guarantee they won't be sorry.
Yeah.
Buck, I appreciate you spending your time with Music and Madness today. Could there be anything cooler that could happen here on the Music and Madness podcast? That was an awesome interview. They're an awesome band. Please join me in watching them at the Savannah Center on February 21st at 7 p.m. It's going to be a great show.
I'm